3 British nationals are facing the death penalty over their alleged involvement in smuggling cocaine disguised as packets of Angel Delight, which they tried to get into Bali airport. John Collier and Lisa Stocker were arrested at the international airport there back in February. The authorities claim that they were caught with almost £300,000 worth of cocaine, about a kilo of the stuff. While Phineas Float, the third person accused, was allegedly due to receive the packages, and he was nicked just a few days later.
The trio are part of a growing number of Brits being arrested abroad for drug-related offences, with cases jumping more than 50% in the past year. That's according to the charity Prisoners Abroad, who also say young people and women made up the majority of cases. Well, it's a story all too familiar to our guests who you just saw. Michaella is one of the notorious Peru too. She spent 3 years behind bars in a prison near Lima after attempting to smuggle £1.5 million worth of cocaine out of Peru back in 2013.
As you can see, she's here alongside Mark Dempster, who smuggled drugs for more than a decade in the 80s and the 90s, before giving up his life of crime to get clean, and he's now actually an addiction counsellor. So welcome both. I mean, one of the reasons that you're here this morning is because of this extraordinary jump, and it's borne out by the headlines that we've all been reading over the last year or so, that more and more and more, mostly young people, a lot of them women, are taking phenomenal risks in taking Class A drugs into countries such as Bali. They have the death penalty if you get caught. What's your reading of this? What's happening?
I feel like it's something that's always been happening. I feel like a small majority of cases being made aware in the public.
Well, actually, this charity says that there has been a rapid rise in new cases, up 57%. So actually, it might always have been happening, but it's suddenly increasing.
Yes, and I think it's alarming that it's all young girls and it's similar stories. They've all travelled to a country alone that they haven't been to before, and their families are filing missing persons reports and they wind up in prison. I mean, it's a similar story to my situation.
Tell us what happened to you, Michaella, because you're part of a sort of notorious story called the Peru too, but people may not know how you got caught up in this.
So I had went to Ibiza when I was 19. It was the first time, Ibiza. And it was the first time I'd ever left the UK. It was my first holiday. I had no friends. I went completely alone. I didn't know anybody there. Within 2 weeks, I started making friendships and relationships, and I made a friendship with this group of people that ended up luring me into trafficking drugs.
When you say luring you into, what did they do?
Well, the initial friendship, everybody in Ibiza at that time was consuming a lot of drugs. I as well was consuming a lot of drugs, drinking a lot of alcohol. I had this safe group of people that they didn't take drugs and they didn't take alcohol. So I was inclined to spend more time with them, and I guess I trusted them because they were good people. They didn't party, they didn't do anything.
You were targeted from the word go, that they saw you, a 19-year-old, very naive, never travelled abroad before, you don't know left from right, really.
Yeah.
And they see you and they think, yeah, she could be a drugs mule.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. These organisations, they have people that are pickers, and their job merely is to pick people to become mules, and they will target their vulnerabilities. Their vulnerabilities might be their age, because at 19, 20, you're incredibly naive, you're easy to manipulate. Women as well, obviously women tend to be groomed and coerced in situations a lot more. Whether you have drug addiction, that can be a vulnerability. There's so many different vulnerabilities.
But can I ask, Michaella, because you were offered £5,000, is that right, to smuggle drugs, and you were told what? Because £5,000, obviously to you as a 19-year-old, huge amount of money, but the consequences of what you did were more devastating than the benefit of getting £5,000. So what was it that this group of people told you was going to happen? Because I'm not sure that you say 19-year-olds young, naive, but a lot of 19-year-olds would think that is very, very risky. Yeah, exactly. But you have to understand that the level of manipulation that goes in behind this, it's not just overnight. It's probably weeks of manipulation. And they ended up making me believe that this was totally fine. I was being dramatic. I was being naive to question whether... Totally fine because they said what? They were like, everybody does this. This is fine. We work with the police. We work with everybody in the airport. You're being dramatic. You're just being... You've never done this. You've never left the country, making me feel like I
silly little girl.
Little girl, and I didn't know anything, and I was so scared to say no. I feel like that was a problem with women as well, and men know that. They know they can manipulate women to do things, and I was so scared just to say no. And you're so far away from your family. This is another vulnerability. These women are in Thailand. They're so far away from family. When you don't have contact with your family or friends, you're even more vulnerable.
How did they expect you to take the drugs? How did
so
you,
they didn't
did you carry them?
communicate this until the very last moment. They told me I would take one package. And obviously my phone, I had no contact with my family. I wasn't allowed to speak with anybody. And when I arrived to Peru, I realised there was 16 packages that I had to hide in my suitcase. And they told me it's only one package and you have to hide it in the bottom left. And then I had 16 packages. I had no clothes because I came from Ibiza. Peru was very cold. I had maybe 7 items of clothing. They told me to wrap it. I didn't have enough items of clothes. I didn't have enough space in my suitcase. And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? Do I leave these drugs now and just go? You're under this fear of what to do. So the information, they feed it to you little by little. They don't give you all of the information initially. It's almost just kind of...
Eventually, you know, obviously, eventually you went home. Mark Dempster, there'll be a lot of people at the moment whose teenagers are travelling, who will see these cases, hear what happened to Michaella, and think, how do I impress it upon my youngster? You do not get caught up in this. Because what Michaella's described is, for someone on the outside, you think, so obvious you would say no. Like, you couldn't pay someone enough to take the kind of risk people are taking, especially when the death penalty is involved.
Yeah, of course,
But clearly what Michaella says is you get kind of manipulated and you're told there's a corrupt system where everyone's involved and don't worry, you're the idiot for saying no. You're a counsellor.
Yeah, I'm a therapist in Harley Street,
And you used to do it yourself. What can we tell our youngsters?
Well, look, I used to do it. I knew exactly when I was doing it, I was involved. My family were involved in a lot of crime on my father's side. Wow. So it'd been very normalised for me from a very young age to quick money, crime, you know, involvement in crime. So what I would say to the young for parents who are trying to educate their youngsters about the possibilities of this happening, I would like to say to them to look, if this happens to you, if you get approached in whatever country it is, and somebody starts to tell you about quick money and easy access to quick money, then that should be alarm bells. Red flags should be coming up right away. That, you know, this is obviously that somebody who's got intentions are to manipulate you in order to get you to become a mule.
What you're saying is you should groom-proof your kids.
Groom-proof your kids, because...
You should say, look, this is a situation you might find yourself in. Don't be persuaded, because they know exactly what they're doing.
But then there's also a whole cohort, right, that are not groomed, right? We've got to understand that as well. We've got different sections here. We're talking, me and Michaella were talking about this. You've got the grooming for sure, right? And there'll be people who are more susceptible. They've got mental health issues or whatever it might well be. But then there's a whole group of young people where they see the attraction to the quick money. Now, all of our media and all films that we watch on TV are all sort of gangster type. You know, it's very attractive looking, that quick access to money. So,
well, the allegation in the Barley case, which of course is ongoing, and we don't know whether the 3 people there are going to be convicted or acquitted. We don't know yet. The allegation is that they stood to make, if they're guilty, we don't know that, £300,000. It's that kind of big money that allows them to take risks with their lives.
I would say focus on the penalty. It is not worth the risk anyway. It's illegal. Do not do it. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us.